fire for your mind. The Kosher Clinician.
Everyone else bludgeoning us over the head with it, and we just act as though we have no way to control our outcomes in our lives. It's time for us to wield power as well. And that depends basically with taking control of our day-to-day life, the choices that we make, take responsibility for it, set goals and set our goals big. And really the people that are around you, one man at a time, you can have a small conversation. And if that brother is open to the conversation, you just recruited another brother to the team that's positive, that's looking to change his image. If he's not positive, just keep stepping. It's not about changing nobody's mind. It's about finding brothers of like-minded. Okay, Kosher Clinician, I see you're back. Talk to me.
Can you hear me, brother? Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Yeah. It's something with my other system. I got two systems going on. But anyway, so this conversation is very important, Sage Talk. I think it's very important because there are a lot of competing factors that are in play that's trying to decimate the image of the black man. And the thing about projecting image is that we have what's called tribalism in the conquest of shaping the image of the black man. At one time, due to Jim Crow racism and slavery, black men were unified as one. But we have been very fragmented now based on the competing factions that don't seek to advance the cause of the black man, the black family, or the black community. And sadly, a percentage, and I say a percentage of our women have been compromised and have been saboteurs of their own ignorance, which in essence causes us to have these current conversations that we're having now. Listen, it always starts with a movement. Sometimes that movement can start with a few. But then with that few, it goes to something even bigger. And there was a time when the image of the black man, even though we were under the pillages and the ravages of Jim Crow racism, we were more advantageous because we projected strength, we projected values, and we projected things that were more or less beneficial to the function of the black man, the black family, in the community. But now there are so many competing factions that you talked about earlier, that are seeking to decimate and or erase the image of the black man, that it's going to be a Herculean effort. I'm not going to say it can't be done, but it's going to be Herculean nonetheless, because we are not monolithic as black people. We weren't even monolithic when we came on the slave ship, but we were forced into oneness. So I agree with you. It's going to take black men of the same like mind and the same consciousness to get together. And as I say on my show from time to time, I say as men, we may not agree on all things or ideologies, but we do have a commonality in our struggle that more or less says that we must come together to more or less formulate a plan that's going to help us become the better versions of ourselves, because there is a crisis in masculinity that needs to be addressed.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Marvelous opinion. Welcome.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sir. How you doing, sir? I was going to add that when it comes to our image, it's really one of those things that I don't want to say can't be fixed, but it comes down to the first image that you should look at is yourself in the mirror, in my opinion. The first person you should be examining yourself, and how you go about being yourself, understanding who you are and being your true self. You have to first learn to accept that first. You know what I'm saying? If you don't love yourself, you can't love other people. You know what I'm saying? I think there is a lack of that amongst a lot of people in general, that people are moving about in a way that, honestly, in my opinion, is they're making assumptions. People are more impulsive. People are not going by what they know. They're going by what they feel.
Right.
And they don't ask questions. Like, you feel something, you should utilize that. Your curiosity. The things that you feel, you should question and challenge things. But some people just take the things they feel and just ride with it off the pre-assumptions and preconceived notions that I believe make them very narrow-minded in the way they view things, the way they take things, the way they decide with things. I'm very curious about a lot of things. I'm always asking questions. If I feel something, that's when I go within and say, where is this coming from? You know what I'm saying? Some people don't have that in them, the patience and discipline to ask questions and to not go uninformed. But I believe a lot of people are making uninformed decisions as they move forward in life. But it starts with themselves, first challenging themselves before they can challenge the world. I think once people, men in particular, start to build themselves up properly by start with themselves, then you can start to see the process of people flourishing in a way. But it starts with the individual from the ground up before you can actually build upon people. The people themselves have to be strong-minded, strong-willed, strong-spirited. If they're weakened, how can you build an empire with that? That's my opinion.
Okay, well taken. You're right. Obviously, it starts with oneself, right? How you how you perceive yourself within and without. I think one of the things as black men that we have to do is we have to broaden our scope. You know, one thing I've learned from working around white people is that when their children comes out of the university, usually within the first year or two, they travel the world. They go to
Right.
Europe, they
Right.
backpack, they
Right.
go to Africa, they work as missionaries. They do things in the first 1 to 3 years of their life to kind of like figure it out. And they learn to make that theoretical knowledge that they have learned in school and then get a taste of life and see how and where they want to apply it. They already come from a position where wherever they go in the earth, they're either ruling in those places or their influential reach and footprint is so large that even if they're not there in the heads of state, there's another country that represent them that have a heavy hand in that society or in that country. So that's an advantage that they have. So their self-image is well placed within the earth. I think for us as a people, though, it's important that we, particularly black men, whether you're from New York, you know, Boston, whether you're from Atlanta, whether you're from California, DC, wherever you're from in the US, I think it's important that every black man every year take at least 2 weeks to a month, depending on your career and your job, and travel outside the United States. And I'm not talking about traveling for sex, and I'm not talking about traveling for women. You know, that's when you're young, that's your mindset, right? But or some men mindset, not all. Because I was traveling when I was young, but that was never my goal or objective.
Right.
But I'm not going to tell another man what to do.
Right.
But however, I will suggest that you travel because as you travel, it gives you a different vantage point to see the world from. You know, one of the things when you travel, especially in third world countries where a lot of us like to mock and insult the people of those countries, coming from the United States is almost like traveling back in time. You literally get to see the future of where these countries can be in the next 20, 25 years. And when you come from that level of advantage and you have the economics where the dollar, the power of the dollar, or whether you're from Europe, the power of the euro can exponentially give you leverage in the economy of those countries, you look for opportunities where you're able to invest in, buy, and own. And the more black men start to see the world as bigger than just the United States, I think it's going to be far more advantage for us to be able to understand what real power we really have in terms of the leveraging of our dollar. You know, that's another thing I would like to discuss, maybe not on this conversation, but in a future conversation, how we can literally use the leveraging of our buying power. Because we spend a lot of money, but sometimes it seems like the dollar in our hands is like hot coal. We can't wait to shake it out of our hands. But we don't find the leverage of utilizing our dollar, saving, investing, and buying within to build within.
I'm afraid I can't read fast enough to keep up with my work.
To stay focused on my work and save time, I use Speechify's free Chrome extension. It's easy. Just highlight the text, right-click, and then Speechify will read it out to me.
The event was also live streamed to Disney-owned Hulu. plus ABC News Live.
You can adjust your listening speed based on what's most comfortable, and then choose the soothing voice you want to hear, helping you stay focused and productive. It works with any text you need to read on your computer, articles, PDFs, even emails.
Despite people saying banks don't get into crypto, it's interesting to see the Royal Bank of Canada running a Bitcoin node.
With a simple click, I can send whatever I'm reading to my phone, so I can take it on the go.
In a market within Black America. And that's something that what we do, we make others rich. Everyone come from around the world, set up a business in a Black community, and in 5 to 10 years, they're rich. Their sons and daughters are going to private schools, they're going to private top universities, and then they insult us and they treat us like we're crap and they don't respect us. And that's because we don't have no leverage. And the only way we're going to get leverage is by us broadening and understanding who we are and the power that we have. Kosher Clinician, would you like to add something to that?
You know, there's an evolutionary process that we got to go through that first starts with more or less creating strong nuclear families that are intact, but families where the men are actually projecting power and strength. You know, Tavis Smiley said it better than me. He said that when white America gets a cold, Black America gets the flu. And the point is, there's not only an attack on heteronormative masculinity as it relates to a Black man perspective, it's an attack on heteronormative masculinity as it relates to a man perspective. And so there's a lot of uncovering that needs to happen before we can recover as a people. There have been years, Sage Talk, of social conditioning that's more or less broken the spirit of Black men and men in general, but has caused them to be in a state of disrepair. And so until we can go back and find out what that uncovering is, which is a lot of times is predicated in the mental health field, as I, as a licensed therapist, seek to do, then some of the things that we're talking about can be foolhardy, because you got to address the issue, which is the pathology in the mind and the image that's often projected of Black men in America, and those saboteurs that seek to undermine the masculinity of Black men, the good brothers that you talked about. We're not talking about peons, dusty guys, and guys that are, shiftless and aimless, but we're talking about good blue-collar Black men that in other countries would be men of valor. We're talking about white-collar professionals, good brothers. We're talking about average height brothers. We're talking about those men that have more or less given their virtues and their talents to America. But many times their talents are trampled upon because we have a very sickening mentality in America that says he's not enough. And so I say that we got to release the king within many young men, but there are so many barriers that are still in place, Sage Talk Lee, because with 80% of our children being born in single parent homes, a select few of men, not by a large percentage of men, it's causing a lot of social chaos. And I see it all the time as a licensed therapist. So we got to go back and uncover what we need to recover in order to move forward. I think that we can have a small cadre of men that can come together and start working together to reformulate the image of the Black man. But it's going to take some time. It's going to be a war of attrition. And so there are so many competing factors that are at play. Can it be done? Perhaps. But it's going to be a lot of work, in my opinion.
I wanted to add that I was talking to Tia over on Anton's network, but one thing Tia did bring up, I believe that we have an issue with in our community is class. Mm-hmm. The problem I really do see is class and culture. We are not a monolith, mm-hmm. but we do view and talk about ourselves monolithically. We actually do have divides, and people have different standards, practices, tongues, religion, all that within your image. The thing is that when it comes to our image being portrayed on the massive stage, they've always done this, but they do take the bottom of the barrel. They take people from the lower class and prop them up. They take literally turd and spray it painted with gold and say, look at this. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's more of, it's a tactic. It's sly, but it's like we're always going to have people who are going to they're the most easiest prey. The people who are downtrodden, unfortunate, they're going to be utilized in that manner. It's always going to be that way. We can't stop them from utilizing us in that way. Even when it comes to, like, I noticed a while back on Facebook, I think it was last year, I noted this. It kind of cleared up a little bit, but I noticed it was hot when they started censoring certain things on YouTube, on Facebook, but they weren't censoring black people's images. Like, you see black people doing the most crazy, horrendous things to each other, and it wouldn't be no, graphic content label on that stuff. On our stuff, it was just out there, like it was normalized. Everyone else, no matter what it is, it was always saying graphic nature. You might want to click on this, or make sure you click on this, it's gonna be violent or something like that. But I noticed when it came to our content that showed our image, there was no warning label. They just allowed everyone to see it. You know what I'm saying? I picked on little things like that, but it's starting to clear up a little bit. But then I say, like, we want our image to be better, but yet there's a lot of us kind of laughing at our pain. And it's like, we can't just laugh it off all the time. We got to take it serious. If y'all really want to do something about it, you need to police each other. But that's what I told you, like, we're not monolithic. It's a class thing. So you got people in classes that, hey, this is normality. This is nothing for us. We can laugh this off. This is ha-ha. Then you have those in the middle. It's kind of like, well, I think we can do a little better. I have some standards. Then you have high class people who are well beyond, the ones who usually look down on other people in a way, who would say they are better. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot that's going on in our community, but we do have to understand one thing. There is class amongst the black people, and the ones that's being celebrated are actually the lower class. Like, even, I don't want to talk about him, but he's a good, perfect example. Tia brought it up, was we had Jim Jones, who is low class, and the way his mentality is and everything, how he carries himself, his manners, his disciplines, he's not a high class person. Even though he has money that's high class, how he carries himself, who he is, how he puts himself out there, is not in a way that I would assume he had money. I would assume he was just like where he come from, in the gutter. You know what I'm saying? His class and mentality did not change. The way he makes money may have elevated, but who his character is, his elevation has not changed. And we have these people in leadership positions, and then they'll get on platforms and say, look at me, man, I'm still being treated like dog-ish. And it's like, because I'm black or whatever. And I personally can't say if that is or if not the case, but the fact is this: there was a black guy that was there serving him and was disregarding him because of how he was acting. Now, you can say, like I said, people can nitpick, but I personally don't like to go off assumptions and what I feel. Like, oh, I feel he was hating. I feel it was just like, no, go with what you know. You know that this guy acts a certain way. He's in a place where they don't tolerate low class people. You have to be in a higher echelon to be VIP at a Gucci store. They're not taking riffraff, but it is what it is, though. That's just my opinion, though, looking at the culture.
Well, I would say this. One of the things I think in general is that I'm talking about really a professional business class, executive class of men, black men. And I think for the past 50 years, 60 years, we have just sat back silently, not voicing ourselves as to what image we want to project of us. For those that want to project themselves in the way in which they have, let them. It's not for us to craft their image. They profit and benefit from what they do. Let them. Our job is to become more proactive in crafting our image and how we want to be perceived. The thing is that we have not given society at large, not only black society, but the overall society of America, we have not given them a choice with regard to the different type of black men that exists. Yes, we're not a monolith, but the bottom line is we're perceived as such because we have sat back silently and allow those who behave in the way in which they do and where the media promote that behavior and give it more showtime, and we just quietly say, oh, that's not me, so it doesn't affect me, so that's not me. But you know what? It does affect us, and we have come to realize at this point in 2022 that it does affect us, and it's time that we take active measures to promote ourselves and make our megaphone louder than those who have had the stage for quite some time. I don't think it can't be done. I'm sure it can be done. And why I believe it can be done and it won't be a Herculean task is because we now have the ability to show forth our own image. We don't need to go to the major white media to show forth our image. We can do that on a telephone. We can do that on YouTube. We could do that on Facebook. We could do that on Google. There's so many different medias right now, and day by day are growing where we have control over the image we project. There are those who will be entertained by foolishness. Everybody likes a good laugh. I like a good laugh from time to time myself. But how much time are you going to spend allowing that level of entertainment to consume you? If you're going to promote that kind of low class way of the black man's image, then you can't complain about when people see you in a certain way. You have to promote the image that you want to see. And what we're doing here with Sage Talk and the Lapeef Network is we're going to build a team. We're going to build a marketing arm that's going to change black men going forward. And within the next 2 to 3 years, you're going to see the power of image. That's what I'm saying. Meek, talk to me.
Let me unmute. Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon, gentlemen. Good afternoon. So I think, right, that there's multiple things that we first have to realize before we could even start changing our image. Because see, I think a lot of us think that our image is fine. And one thing that I've realized is that the way that we do things, the way that we think this is normal, it's actually dysfunction. And when you try to bring this to people, there's a pushback on it. And once they're pushing back, like they can't see what's going on, they're busy pushing back. And I read a couple years ago, I was reading an article, and the article said when you keep someone wrapped up in their traumas, they don't move forward. And there's a concerted effort to keep us wrapped up in the traumas so we don't move forward. See,
I have a question for you.
Go ahead.
Are you wrapped up in your trauma?
Am I wrapped up in my trauma? Well, if you knew the guy I was, no. But for me, I am. For me to have this conversation, I'm most likely not wrapped up in my trauma because I understand what that looks like. And I understand the damage that it does. And I understand how it keeps us from moving forward. So I'm going to have to speak.
Don't speak in a plural sense. Speak in a singular sense as it pertains to you.
Okay. As it pertains to me, no. At one point when I was younger, I believed the narrative. As I got older, you start to see different things, especially the type of family that I came from. So no, I'm not wrapped up in my trauma. I understand what's going on. I also understand the politics that they offer us. See, if we start listening closely, the politics they offer us is politics of failure.
Well, the thing is whatever you listen to over and over, day in, day out, is what you will embrace.
Absolutely.
If you don't listen to it, if you tune it out, it's not going to have no effect on you. You could be aware of it, that it's there and what its functionality is, but it's not going to have an altering effect in your perspective and the things that you do.
Absolutely.
So it's what you allow in to you as a man that's going to control you. If you don't allow it in, it's not going to control you. That's why there's some black men that racism seems to hold back, and there's some black men that racism doesn't seem to affect. Now it affects us maybe on some grander scale, But in their day-to-day life, racism don't affect certain men because they don't allow it into their existence. Z, welcome to the conversation.
How you doing?
Good afternoon.
How's it going, fellas? Yeah, I think what you saying, Meek, is it's true, but it's like would you can't just sit back and just say, oh, yeah, we wrapped up in our trauma and that's why this and that's why that, when you like Sage said, Mr. Lee said, some black men that don't affect, you got to adopt those behaviors, you got to change in order so you can survive. That's what it is. That's what life's all about, survival of the fittest.
So when I'm saying like honestly, I'm not talking about me, because I'm a plumber. I honestly live a pretty good life, you know what I mean? And I'm not bragging, but I don't let everyday racism affect me. I'm not out there on that type of time, because I understand that right there is wrapped up in a trauma and being held back. Right. So I think that we need to get on a grand scale, Black people to understand that staying in that, raising your fist and doing all of that, I mean, that's nice, but that ain't moving us forward.
Well,
Yeah,
I would say this. The language that we use also is very impactful and dynamic with us. When we use terms like wrapped up in our trauma, those are self-defeating words. So you have to limit those type of conversations that you have in the word choice that you select.
Okay.
The public marching and display of false unity for things that offends us, that may be one form of expressing frustration, but I think a lot of the effectiveness of those display are weeding out more and more over time. That came from a different era. That came from the era of the 60s, the 50s and the 60s. We're in the 21st century. How are we going to fight? And the fight is all about image and media. And how do we go about changing the minds of our people? You look to the left of you and you look to the right of you, and you get a man that's moving the way you're moving. And that man looked to the left of him and the right of him, and he get another man moving the way he's moving. And when you come across those who are not moving on your level,
keep it moving.
Don't take it personal. You don't have to insult the brother. He just ain't ready. He have not seen enough to make his mind believe that it's possible. There's some men that don't believe certain things are possible. There were some people that didn't believe a Black president could be when we had one. Whether he was beneficial or not, there was a time people never thought that seeing a Black president in the United States, they would not live long enough to see that. Well, you know what? That happened. So what else is possible if we as Black men begin to think the impossible? Kosher Clinician? You're muted.
Well, I don't know who muted me. Can you hear me?
Might have been JR. Yeah, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Right. So, like I said, man, I think everything that we're trying to formulate and implement in these turbulent times, I think is excellent. I'm not against it. I'm very positive. I do believe it's time to change the image of Black men. I do believe it's time for us to start projecting what our ancestors projected years ago, true to the men that are on the back of this screen. There was a time in the 40s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s when men, especially Black men, exuded a level and a decorum. But as I said earlier, and I want to make sure I'm clear when I say this, and I'm going to be the devil's advocate. Some will argue, Sage Lee, that our thought processes are more or less utopian, that there are too many restrictions that can more or less impede the level of advancement that we need. But the optimist would argue that even though there are many barriers to our success, we can have a modicum of what successful Black men look like. So it depends on how we're trying to gauge or more or less scale this thing. Are we looking at it at the macro level, which is the highest level? Are we looking at the meso level, which is the group level? Or are we looking at it within ourselves? So I'm for it. I'm very optimistic. I do believe in it, but I'm a realist at the same time. And like I said, there are competing factors, there are competing policies that are seeking to subvert the things that you, I, JR, and a lot of masculine men talk about. The black masculine man or black men are the new boogeyman. Masculinity is the new boogeyman. And some might say, well, not talk negative. No, I'm not talking negative. I'm talking reality because I've been through it myself. But at the same time, I do agree with you that you should not continue to mire in victimhood, mire in trauma, and mire in pointing fingers. Because like the great C.S. Lewis said, you can't stop a bird from flying over your head, which is racism, but you can stop that bird from landing the nest on top of your head. So my whole point is some of our people need to go through therapy. They need therapy. They need to be reformulated. They need to have their schema modified. And until we get to some of the more salient issues which start with the mind, even though these ideas are very good, to say the least, there still can be some levels of distress that keep us from taking it, in my opinion, to optimal levels.
Well,
I
you know,
want to
that
ask
is true.
something. I was going to say.